I am thrilled to bring back to the Arise Humanity audience Pablo Mascia. And Pablo, I interviewed a while back, and we did a really interesting chat about the essential and ignored link between spirituality, energy, and tattooing. So, Pablo is a tattoo artist who has his own business, and he's also writing a book about this. And he is really doing groundbreaking work, I believe, about the focus is tattoo with intention. So it's being able to have tattoos, but being very mindful about all the different aspects of what it means to have a tattoo. And so this is in the interview, and I'll leave a link below for our first interview because it was really interesting. But we covered things like why it's so important to be aware of things like the symbology of the tattoos, the colors, the materials, the time that you get your tattoo done, all the different aspects of tattooing that many people don't think about. They go, I want a tattoo. They go and then just get something random. So, it's much more complex than that. And our body, of course, is a very complex system. And when you're putting things on the body, in certain parts of the body, you want to know that you're not interfering with, your overall energy and your health as well. So this is a discussion that I think is really important at this time. So many people are getting tattoos. Do you know, Pablo? I just had a friend for her birthday going to the tattoo today. I thought that's so interesting because I'm interviewing Pablo tonight about tattoos. But big welcome. It's wonderful to have you here. And first of all, how are you?
Doing well, a lot better than the previous interview where I was suffering immensely from vertigo. But thank you. I'm good. Happy to be here.
Well, it was a wonderful interview. I had people commenting that they really enjoyed it. So you did really well considering I didn't even really notice. So no, it was great. It was a great interview. So what
You're
I thank you. So what I want to do today is I want to talk a bit more about tattoos and the importance of being mindful and having intention when we get our tattoos, and also to be discussing with you. You are opening a tattoo school, which is really exciting. That's I feel like it's your soul mission of what you're bringing in, as well as your book, of course. And so we're going to talk more about that. You're based in Aldinga Beach in South Australia. So it's good for people to know that you're in South Australia and that all your details as well will be below if people want to contact you about things and ask you any questions. Did you get much contact from the last interview? I think a few people contacted you, didn't they?
Yeah, I've had a few people reach out and a few people sort of inquiring about how do I learn this stuff. There's nothing available on the internet or, most of the time it's associated with the art. So when I feel like I'm talking a second language or a different language to people because I'm talking about everything but the art. And there's so many layers of complexity to it, as you said before. Our body's a super intelligent system, a computer, if you will, and you have to be mindful of all these different things. So really just comments about that and how to learn from stuff, which there's nothing. So that kind of gives me a bit of confidence moving forward because a lot of this you can't find on Google. A lot of it's based from my 23 years of experience, being so intimate in the craft, particularly in the last 8 years, where it's just been honing my abilities to facilitate a ritual in essentially a private setting, which is so different. Like your friend would attest to that. She's getting done, no doubt, in a conventional modern day environment. Mine's the total polar opposite of the spectrum to that, and
it's more like a spiritual ceremony, perhaps. Is that how would you describe it?
100%. And I'm not meaning to have any negative. I don't want to invoke any negative connotations to the word ritual because a ritual can mean brushing your teeth every day. It's just a series of acts in a particular order we repeat daily.
Yeah.
But then you're talking about the sacredness of it and stuff, and then you start going into the spiritual nature of it. Where does that come from? Why we talk about this, especially with the New Age movement of spirituality? Well, it kind of goes back to our ancestry, and why we performed this craft to begin with. Because let's not forget where this craft originates from. It's from where the Vedic and the Chinese medicine was started to come out in our earliest literature. Tattooing came out of the Neolithic era, for example. So it's akin to acupuncture. So it's got all these kind of ancestral roots in this sort of era, and you can kind of see how we've lost connection to these things.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's fascinating. So what was the original sort of purpose of tattoos? For example, when they were mindful about it and they were doing it for these reasons when it was first originated, what was the purpose of them? Was it really to be part of their own spiritual evolution? Was that the whole purpose of the tattoo?
Okay, well, that's a very loaded question and a very passionate topic. The best example that we can find to date is in the preserved human specimen known as Otzi the Iceman, and you can do all your research on him. Now, what we've learned from him and other mummified remains around that sort of era, he predates them all to this day. He's the most examined specimen around the world right now. But what we learned from these type of tattoos in this era, it wasn't about the artwork. They were deliberately put on acupuncture points of the body.
Yes.
They're both, because when you look at like acupuncture theory and stuff like that, it's all about protecting the body from the invasion of external invaders, right? So that can come in the form of wind. They talk about wind and the cold and the damp and stuff, which also can present demonic forces and things like that entering the body too. So that's where they believe.
So like a form of protection.
Well, that's right. So you talk about like pallbearers and stuff in the ancient times, equivalent of. People that handle the dead bodies, for example, they are the most prone to attacks from spirits.
Right.
So usually they see like in stages. So disease enters the body, then it starts to affect the wrists and the ankles, and then it starts to go from there and get worse and worse till ultimately someone dies. So that's why you see a lot of tattoos in those sort of islander and more spiritual based tattoos back in the day, are more like bands and protection things around the wrists and the ankles. And the back behind the head and the neck and stuff. So there's all these kind of like hot spots,
there's an important chakra point at the back of the neck, which is a point at which lower vibrational energy can go into the body. It's like a small chakra point. So I always ask people to seal that with golden light so that it's closed, so it's not allowing, other energies in. That's a really important thing. And so to have a tattoo there to protect that, I can see why people would do that. On a spiritual level. Can you just tell me the spelling of that Aussie that you mentioned? How do you spell the name of that ice?
Maybe I mispronounced him. So it's Otzi. So Otzi.
Otzi. Okay, great. So just in case people are wanting to Google, fantastic. So we did cover some of this information in the first interview. So I don't want to sort of backtrack too much, but it's good to hear that. Good for people to hear that because it's really important.
It helps set the foundation of that. Like I like to mention him first because, like I said before, like we need to know where we come from before we can talk about where we are now and where we move forward.
Sure. So are there other people out there doing similar work to you where they have this real intentionality about tattooing? Because personally, I haven't heard of anyone else that is doing this work in this way.
Well, as I said, I feel as though this is quite special in the way that it's going against the current narrative of how tattoo is performed. I hope that I'm not the only person doing this. I've just yet to find them. So I guess the nature of writing my book, for example, and then the future conversations I'll have, such as yourself, and in the future, is to kind of find my own tribe. There are a few people that are sort of on the sort of same campaign, let's say, but too few and far between. That really just shows the divide, as I was saying before, about ancestry and I guess the modern era and how there's such a disconnect. And the reason why I say that is because I grew up when I was becoming an apprentice and growing up in the industry, I noticed the big separation, the divide between the tattooist and the tattoo artist. So the era of the old school tattooists, you know, with the bikers and the drugs and the bikes out the front, all that sort of rustic kind of all hidden information, versus where we are now, where I would say it's more like a high-tech art collecting era. You know, we're getting all wireless machines, everything's all synced up, and no one, you know, pen and paper is no longer a thing. People are on iPads and drawing stuff and getting all tech savvy and stuff. And as a result of that, there's pros and cons to both. But like, it was really the divide between the artist and the pursuit of art, instead of this kind of culture. Because as rustic and as unorthodox the biker age was, or the tattooist age was, at least they were rooted, they knew where they came from, and they just carried on traditions. Like, you couldn't learn half of the things that you can learn now, which you can look up online. You almost had to like earn the information by hanging out with them, doing the dishes, so to speak, and then you know, earn the stuff and rapport, and then they pass that knowledge on to you, which then you pass on to, you know, we kind of lose a little bit now, selling yourself out, having all these instructionals and things like that you can acquire on the internet now. So anyone can basically buy a machine and tattoo, watching a few instructionals, and there you go, there's your career, you know. So
yeah,
it's important to know, you know, that's why I talk about that, the split between the two.
Sure. Okay, so with your soul mission, tell us about your vision for what you're wanting to create with the tattoo school, and why you're wanting to create this school. I mean, obviously you are doing things here with tattoos that other people I haven't seen are doing. So I think it's a fantastic vision that you have, and I really wanted to bring you on and get you to share about it and support, you know, what you're doing. So, you know, please share with us your goals, your dreams, and you know, your visions for this.
Well, okay. Well, thank you for opening that platform to begin with. I would say the main thing is, with doing things the way that I've learned, you know, in organic fashion on my own accord. What I've learned is how to become so intimate with my craft, with free of all the distractions, right? And in learning how to sort of, I guess, fundamentally, what tattooing really is you're facilitating a ritual, and the craft that we're utilizing in the ritual is essentially a key to our evolution of, I guess, the soul while in the hip, while it occupies the physical body. And what I mean by that is, when you understand what tattoo is and how it's actually sort of a form of energy medicine, and how when we choose tattoo to get tattooed, what we're essentially doing is we're prescribing ourselves a specific dosage of, let's say, frequency or vibrational information, to be administered to us. So you don't, so within all my research and everything I've learned, and how I sort of end the book in the conclusion, I'm basically just saying, you don't really need that many tattoos over a lifetime. You just need the right ones.
Yes.
And because there's so much misuse and abuse of tattooing, and particularly with the removal of tattoos, which we'll go into, it's a very important topic. The nature of, I guess you could say, more like mind-orientated collecting versus like body or soul-orientated collecting, is the analogy of I give is like being on a merry-go-round. And each subsequent pass, you're swiping your credit card and you're getting another tattoo, and you're just on this loop. And that is a dangerous thing, because a lot of people find themselves on this merry-go-round. And I'll use this analogy throughout because I think it's very important. It's just an easy way to explain it, because you know, obviously you want to get off of that. And if you stay on it, the longer you get on it, the more tattoos you're acquiring, and subsequently the more risk of regret you might get. Because if you're going through a ritual and you're not being mindful or have certain intentions, or being facilitated by someone who has a similar intention to you, like in any other form, like dating or whatnot, when you have these misaligned intentions, that's where things can go quite sour. And that's no different than tattooing, except you've got a permanent marking of that. And then we're advertised this alternative to regret, which is the laser removal, But all that's really doing is further giving you psychological reinforcement. So, for example, if you are going into tattoo ritual feeling like you deserve the punishment, so classic example would be, you know, you have a breakup and you want to start to feel good about yourself. You want some short-term validation, or maybe you feel like you deserve the punishment, you know, you're wronged or whatever, right? And then you're going into a ritual facilitated by somebody who is very much about just putting headphones on, focusing on the art, and just no conversation, which is typical of the modern era. All you're doing is you're sort of left to your own thoughts. And what tends to happen is you're getting this reinforcement. The tattooist is there to confirm to you that, yes, you do deserve it. So you're psychologically reinforcing these self-limiting belief patterns. And then what tends to happen is you're carrying this emotional anchor point through the rest of your journey. But then when you say you get the regret and then you're going through the laser, that's even furthermore psychological reinforcement of the punishment thing. And then you're actually adding, and just because the tattoo's removed, you can't physically see it, you still have the energetic aspects of that still carrying and lingering in.
Sure.
So it really doesn't matter what the tattoo superficially looks like. It's all about what's underneath the skin, buried in the skin, integrated into the aura. You know, it's all these different things.
So is there a way to remove it so that you can completely get rid of that whole energetic aspect?
Whatever creates the disharmony in the body has nothing to do with the tattooing.
Right.
Nothing to do with it. It's all energy. And when you realize about and I can back all this up with when you start talking about psychosomatics and you're talking about you know, how energy is trapped in the bodies and blocked meridians and all these different kind of ways we store energy in the body. So classic example that everyone talks about, this book, the Body Keeps Score, for example. You know, it's all about how you know, our body, and as we go through certain types of traumatic events, these type of energies and things store in our bodies.
Sure, at a cellular level. Yep.
Yeah. And then when you're getting the tattoo on top of that, you're actually increasing more risk of psychological reinforcement. As I said, you're adding more obstructions and obstacles into the body. And these are things that, you know, I'm not trying to make it like it's a problem. There are solutions to this. But then you're faced with that dilemma. What's, you know, the prevention versus the cure kind of scenario.
So that you can see there's a bigger picture to it all that maybe people haven't been considering. Yeah.
When you're so focused on the art, you know, the short-term validation of art, you know, not thinking about these other things. And it's sort of the way that I kind of explain in the book is sort of like, you got to try and think of it as it's just a superficial veil for what's really occurring in the body. Like, you have to ultimately learn to live with your decisions no matter what they are. A scar's a scar. This is just a colorful scar. And for example, people that have self-harm scars, you know, they are the best examples for, you know, wanting to do this restorative, transformative tattoo work, right? But you've also got to think psychologically, you're just putting a scar on top of another scar. So what's the solution to that? Well, it's about perspective. And if you're able to change someone's perspective, it can change a life. So how you would change that, you would just say, well, be mindful that the scars that you bear are just a reminder to serve that you are stronger than what tried to kill you.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So you use it for a positive
it's about orientation, you know, rather than dwelling in the past and having a past orientated kind of mindset. You want to offset that with the forward instead of going, because too many people trapped in this victim cycle, right? And then a lot of tattoos reflect that. And a lot of tattoos that are made in this mind state on the merry-go-round analogy, a lot of tattoos that these people adorn are sort of should be more reserved for their therapy journals rather than on their skin for the world to see. Sure. And people try to hide behind symbolism. But when you understand how symbolism works, you know, they have a literal or figurative meaning or both, and people can sort of hide behind this sort of this veil that we really don't know what's going on. In the book, you understand how symbology and the other factors can actually help you understand what your tattoos really say about you.
Well, symbology is so powerful. So, you know, that how they talk about the with the dark, symbology will be their downfall because it is so powerful.
Around us everywhere's the inversion, you know, everything that has always tried to be pure and sully has become inverted and unsullied has become sullied. And there's this inversion of everything that we're just so accustomed to now, you know, from the colors being darker. Like you see movies now from, you know, back in the 80s to now, everything just looks darker and the subject matter is darker. And we're just seeing, like, you know, your Taylor Swifts and stuff all in the music, all the way to get into
Yeah.
our psyche of all
Yes.
this symbolic connotations. And we just accept that as face value, not thinking anything of it. But you have to know your enemy, so to speak, and you have to know the games that they're playing in order to, you know, I guess prevent succumbing to it, you know. And
That
that's no.
reminds me, it reminds me of the weather reports. They used to be, you know, blue, you know, the little temperature things on the weather reports, and now they're all red. So to say subconsciously, oh, we're all in danger of climate change, rah, rah, rah. You know, it's all being, you know, subliminal sort of triggering and subliminal programming that's going on that you know is all fake anyway. So very
And that's
interesting.
no different than tattooing. You see the different phases or the trends and how they keep sort of coming along, and then they repeat themselves again in different ways, you know. You look at a classic example would be the Ariana Grande concert event that happened in the UK. There were like some fans that died. I can't remember exactly what happened, if it was a terrorist attack or something, but people died. So then all the Ariana Grande fans all decided to get drone bees tattooed on.
Oh, wonderful. Great idea. Well, the cabal will love that.
Yeah, and then you think of like where the queen bee resides in England.
Yeah.
And you've got all the drones.
And
So, you know.
encouraging people to be drones and robots. Another thing that you're saying is that if you grab a tattoo to mark some sort of occasion or something like that, it can just still keep holding you back into the old energies. You know, it can keep holding you in a sort of a stagnant energy of that time, not allowing you to move forward and be at your highest potential. That was one of the things that you just mentioned, isn't it?
Yes, and like anything, there's the positive and the negative of it. So you can have a date or something that reminds you initially, like say a child's birth date or a partner's name or something like that. And it could go
That
in.
can be dodgy if you if you put a partner's name on and then you break up and then you've got to go and get it off again.
But that's why I always say to people, instead of like essentially putting a blood contract with that person's frequency, like the lettering and the numerology of their name, think of something more symbolic, because then at least if it doesn't sort of, if you guys part ways down the track, it's not as the bind isn't as strong, so to speak. You can sort of.
Yes, that's a great idea. Like
Just
say
by
their spirit animal is a deer or something like that, they can get like a little deer or something.
yeah. But you know, there's shades of grey to that as well. But I think it's worth having basically the stamp of their name and all that sort of stuff. I'd rather deal with than you know. So you have got to be mindful of that. And this is all from experience too, like having tattooed it on myself, having to go through breaking the cords of that stuff and things later on, like and seeing firsthand tens of thousands of times people think they go into it the best of intentions, and there's always something, sometimes within a short few days or a week, then you see the breakup, and then you got to tattoo both of them, and then you hear, like at separate times, you hear the stories and how they're like, you see both sides of the argument, you know, and it's very interesting to think to myself, maybe I should have had a bit more stepped in and sort of said, hey, I don't think this is the right thing to do, you know. But then that's my business model, right? Because like the way that I'm talking about my system and what I write in my book and ultimately what I'll teach in the school, it's, you sort of don't want the collector, as I refer to them, to come back, because you don't necessarily, like, you know, your job's done when they come to you and you've sort of gone through the ritual and you've sort of seen not only the evolution of the artwork, but you've seen the evolution of their dispositions. And that's what we want to monitor as well, as side by side to art, is you're worrying about what's happening to this individual. You know, it's a very personal journey between the connection between the tattooist and the collector is very personal. And the system is sort of talking about how, you know, you integrate all these different modalities and things like that to sort of assess what's going on, track and monitor, and sort of see the growth and ultimate outcome. So, you know, you sort of at the end of all that journey, it might take a few months, it might take a few years in some cases, the project. But by the end of it, it's sort of like they feel kind of obliged to come back again, and sort of like you go, no, man, like take 6 months off, like you've completed your journey. But then say that's the anti-business model, because we're sort of taught from the get-go that you want to sort of keep that return business model.
That's right. That's right.
That's the merry-go-round thing once again. You just keep them on it each swipe. So
Is it
after a few
addictive?
years,
Is tattooing a bit addictive for some people?
it is when it's a mind addiction. It is when the facilitation of the ritual is poorly done. And it is when you are in sort of what I refer to as a punishment mode. And you sort of feel like you deserve that, and your self-worth and all that thing is, or your identity is created behind the acquisition of ink. Some people hide behind identity being a heavily tattooed person. And I don't judge people for their choices. In fact, the way that I see heavily tattooed people is they just need more medicine than you or I. And to prove my point about this merry-go-round thing, you think, okay, someone's gone through their whole journey to cover their entire body from head to toe. You think once they do that last little bit on their toenail, they're done, right? There's no more need to get tattoos. Guess what happens? They start to transform their earlier tattoos, and then they go through the cycle of reworking that. They just never get off of it. And heavily tattooed people have the most amazing stories of heartbreak and inspirational stories of all things that the life that they've led, because not only it's actually the best real-time example of living with your decisions. We get certain tattoos and we can hide them, or we want to remove them, but when you've got your whole body done, you go through your life changing your views, like how your emotional states changes also reflects how you view your tattoos. You might like at one point because your state of being is one way, and then when you switch over, then all of a sudden you're looking at it going, that's the point of blame, I don't like this, and you start to question if you should alter it or remove it. It's not the tattoo, it's about your state of being and how your fluctuations of energy and emotions influence your perception of the tattoo.
Right. Have you observed people getting tattoos, perhaps not from you, but other ways, where their energy has gone into a decline from getting the wrong tattoo that has impacted their energy? Like you just said, it's not the tattoo, but it's impacted maybe their meridians or whatever it is that's and
they can't exactly put their finger on it in different ways. And this is where it leads into what I talk about in the book about ritual abuse. So there's the benevolent use of tattoo ritual, and then there's the malevolent use of it. And this is where we start to dwelling in that inverted energy stuff I was telling you about. And it's no different in tattooing, where, there'd be people that are known witchcrafters or practicing dark magic and stuff like that in the tattoo industry, putting their sigils and doing their magic and stuff, because essentially it's a blood ritual. Let's be real, right? And you can actually use a lot of energy to help do your manifesting spells in the ritual. So people that take full advantage of that, this is where it gets a bit of a loaded topic. But yeah, you've just got to understand that there are these people out there. You have to do things to protect yourself, which we sort of go into. Sorry, I did get lost my train of thought. What was your question again? When I was starting to talk about the ritual thing.
Just if people you've observed people going on a sort of like a decline after they've got.
So the decline thing. That's right. Thank you for reminding me.
Pleasure.
So, for example, the classic example is when collectors separate themselves from these practitioners, because when you think about even in the spiritual community, there are like these factions of energy vampires, let's say, that under the pretext of their healing are actually sucking all your energy out, right? And this is the same in tattooing. So when you see collectors that pull away from these, let's call them vampire tattooists, for a poor choice of words, what tends to happen is their health declines, their mental state declines, because they haven't separated themselves from these cords and these binds, which are created through the blood contract of the ritual. So you have to learn, you have to be aware of these things and how to break them. So part of my, how do I say it, like a sidebar from what I'm doing is also helping people break away these cords from these attachments to these type of people. And it's very powerful stuff, and it's sort of a niche thing, and it's not very well talked about and discussed. Most people fear it. That's a very fearful topic. But there are people out there that are screaming for help out there, and it's actually very, very intense work. It's almost like exorcism stuff, if you can imagine that. Because there are some very powerful practitioners out there that, you know, work with the naivety and the ignorance.
Absolutely. I must say too that I saw a video by the wonderful Nyla Newen on her 3D to 5D consciousness, and she specifically talked about how tattoos create portals.
Yes, amen, sister.
Yeah, portals. So that is, you know, serious stuff. So you don't want to just be randomly getting tattoos and opening portals and not knowing what you're doing.
It's also knowing about who's tattooing you. Like anything, when you're going into a ritual with another person, especially, let's just say, sexual, you know, you want to know who you're being intimate with. And a lot of the time, halfway through the act, there's always reports of a switch going off, and then all of a sudden they're a different person, you know? And that's the same as the tattoo thing. Not to that extent, of course, but it's just as intimate, and it's forever. And you have to be aware that there's that energetic exchange that also is a consequence. So you have to really know the person, and not just the superficial thing of here's my artwork, because that's just like the candy wrapping. You want to know what's inside, or the candy around an apple. You want to make sure that what's inside that apple isn't rotten, you know, for that analogy. So doing your research on the type of person, and even just going in there to meet them, you know, feeling the energy of the environment around you is a great way to counter this. So I'm not trying to talk about all the problems and leave people today without solutions. Like, there are simple solutions. It goes back to the prevention versus cure thing, you know. So for people that are unsure, your viewers are unsure, like, you want to make sure that you've done the research on the person in particular. Go feel their energy, talk to them in person, go to the studio, feel that out. And also during what I call the co-creative process, like when you're actually going into the design element with them, who has the power? Is it you giving all the power to the person on the mighty throne, the tattooist, because they're the artist and you're just the collector, you don't know any better? Or is it, well, okay, the respect of the person who's actually going to wear this for the rest of their life? What input do they have? You know what I mean? It doesn't matter your level of artistry. It's meant to be a co-creative process.
And an energy exchange. Yeah.
And you see a bit of like push-pull behind that sort of thing. Like, quite often, the most classic example is the tattooist will just grab a picture last minute, put it together, present it to the collector, not even colored in, it's just the outline of it. And all of a sudden you're meant to just go, yes, that's exactly what I want. But if you go, hang about, can I see that colored in? Or can you just change that one thing? There's this fight. and that really shows the person's true colors, you know, because you should be like, the tattooist should always serve as a mirror for the collector.
Yes.
Because it's our job just to imprint that and give you the space in order to do it, like the environment in which to do it in a beautiful manner. But who am I to dictate what the color is, the symbology, where you're going to put it, and anything that you want goes. You know what I mean? It's your story, it's your frequency. You know, it's like if you're in a band, you know, you've written all this music exactly how you want it, and it's all in your head, and you're trying to get me to play it, and I'm just improvising what I want to do. It's like, no, that's
going off on a tangent.
That's the best way to explain that is, I guess, through music. They're one and the same. You know? So it's all frequency. So it's just understanding these things that's going to be a big factor, not just in the moment of getting the tattoo. It's like 20, 30 years later on.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
you want to eliminate as much potential risk for regret. You know, a lot of people would say later on, they'll be like, oh, I wish I said this, I wish I did that, you know. It's like, why wait till it's too late? You know, do it in the moment, and that will really test, or that will help you gauge the nature of the person you're working with. It should be a very equal process, like a fair process, you know.
Sure. You know, people don't realize how sensitive we are in the human body is, because I was reading this fascinating thing today about how people who put fingernail polish on their fingernails, you know, it's highly toxic. Also, the fingertips are highly sensitive, and we have light points at the end of our fingers, and those light points are like chakras. And so when you put toxic chemical fingernail polish on your fingernails, you're blocking your connection to the divine, your light source. And I'm really unusual because I don't wear fingernail polish. I don't have long, wonderful fingernails, which, most women have great fingernails. I don't, but I've never put anything toxic on my fingernails. And I'm thinking, gosh, that's actually a really good thing because, it's probably really served me and helped me a lot.
Yeah, and you think that your fingers are wands, you're doing your symbols.
Yeah.
Why would you have obstructions on your, and particularly in the nature of tattooing, my fingers are on there. Like, yeah, granted they're in gloves, but like you still feel the energy,
Well, it's so ingrained in our culture for women to have, good fingernails, da 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 da.
Yeah,
But underneath a lot of these things, there's the programming from the dark that has an agenda of why they want us to do those things. And that's just one example. So I just thought that was so fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you look at the tattooing ink, for example. This is a topic we didn't get into last time.
Right.
This is a can of worms. But essentially, comparing to ancestry and now, for example, like we talked about before, back in the day, tattoo ink was made in a specific way that was harmonizing with the body to some degree. Mm-hmm. So let's not forget that, like, anything that's invading the body is not good for you, not long term, right? Mm-hmm. But I would rather the old school way, which was, and it's still practiced today in different parts around the world, and traditional tattoos would grab specific herbs and the charcoal from that, and then alcohol and other bits and pieces. Everyone's got their own little recipe to create the pigment in order to create the tattoo with, right? Mm-hmm. But then in the modern era, what we're seeing is it's just like the cosmetic industry. Absolute carcinogenic poisons, immunotoxins, reprotoxins, mutagenics, all these different effects on our body. Horrendous, right?
Particularly from China too, aren't they? A lot of them.
All
really
around the world. Actually,
one.
America is probably one of the worst, and China and Europe, essentially.
Right, which is pretty much everywhere.
Well, yeah, this is it. So this is beautiful thing, actually, is because coinciding with my book, one of the chapters, Skin, is actually heavily talking and focused about the inks and I guess how it's reminding people about the biological effects and the physics of it as well, which no one sort of really talks about. It allows you to it's very thought-provoking and allows you to sort of, at the end of it, go, well, okay, when things go wrong regarding the tattoo inks, who do you think's held accountable? Is it the tattooist? Is it the collector? Is it the manufacturers? Or is it all of the above? You decide. And I guess that's just a way to kind of explain, or it allows me to further explain why I would say that, is because the harsh truth is there's no, out of all the decades tattooing has existed for in the modern era, and this is early 1900s, you're looking at a pigment base that is not specific for intradermal application, meaning it's not intended to exist inside the body.
Right.
So when you're looking at ink toxicity, more and more you'll see this year, there's all these studies coming out around the world, which I couldn't welcome more, but it's 50 years too bloody late. Where they're saying that there's huge amounts of toxicity in the inks, and particularly what they're noticing is how light plays a significant factor, and how I believe the laser industry has essentially woken a demon, so to speak, that has been laying dormant in tattooed skin for decades, meaning that under different light conditions, these ink particles will react and transform, to the different spectrums of light used in laser removal. Yep. And turning them into carcinogenic things, shattering them into nanoparticulates. And there's many studies coming out that people don't know how nanoparticles behave in the body. So what they're finding is overload in the lymph system of all these broken down particles are now escaping and sort of relocating in different areas of the body, in the fatty tissues and stuff like that, in fluids and stuff like that. So and overloading in the lymph nodes. So they're actually finding in the corpses of what's the word, like the bodies, the dead bodies of heavily tattooed people. Yep. When they're extracting their lymph nodes, for example, they're seeing that the lymph nodes are stained with the dominant color of their tattoos.
So potentially they may have died from cancer caused by or been one of the contributing factors to the
You're
death.
you hit the money, yep, nail on the head, because what they're talking about now in a recent study I just come across, lymphoma, which is typically a rare disease, they're finding more and more of it amongst the tattooed population.
That is fascinating. And isn't this the case that, you know, with the whole medical conglomerate, they've attributed things that are going to cause us dysfunction in our health to things that are not the true causes. You know, so much of our environment is you know, got chemicals and poisons and things like that. And at sort of the bare minimum, that thinking of all the things that that's doing to our systems is enough to cause all these things without saying it's caused by something else that they can then use their medications to gain profits from, you know. So it's just, the whole thing's a minefield, isn't it?
Are we allowed to swear on this program?
Maybe not. I've already got one strike. I don't want to go for two. And it's really not that hard to get them. So,
The only reason why I say that is I did this little drawing. I'll send it to you, actually. It's pretty cool. Basically just says we're effed in all directions. So whether
well, we can say that.
we're having the tattoo inks
And on it goes. That's true. That's true. So,
and, you know, you got to know your enemy. So, you know, I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy about this stuff or you. It's just, you know, these are the very real things that we're confronting, and you have to know your enemy. You have to know their tactics in order to be a strong spiritual warrior, in order to survive. Because if
well, we're in a spiritual war, aren't we? And, you know, a lot of the stuff is very sort of surreptitious and, you know, quite sort of hidden. So, you know, you've got to have your wits about you, don't you, in this reality. And that's just the basic truth, you know.
that's right. But, you know, but going back to the ink thing, the whole irony of it all is, you know, as I said, back in the day, it was more natural based stuff. These days, it's more synthetic and all these other extremities. But the problem is when you sort of just get focused so much on the art, and going back to that merry-go-round analogy, it's not just the once-off act of just collecting a single tattoo on and off. What tends to happen is when people are faced with decisions that they regret, then they're sort of in this fork in the road. Do they either get reworked or covered up, which means there's more injection of these foreign chemicals, which creates more issues, or do they go through the laser aspect, which then creates nanoparticulates, which then can flood through the body, and both of them have dire consequences in the long run. In lots of the studies that are coming out now, it doesn't matter if you're heavily tattooed or you have a small tattoo, you're still at risk with these chemicals, cocktails, which are known as tattoo inks. You're still at risk of lymphomas and other cancers still yet to be diagnosed. And at an era where we're getting the most tattoos acquired worldwide, there's also, as a consequence of that, the most amount of tattoo-related adverse side effects.
Sure.
That's got to put things into perspective too. It used to be every now and again you hear a story. Now we're hearing more, and it could just be as subtle as like, why the biggest one is, every now and again a part of my tattoo raises and it gets really itchy and I can't stop the itching, and it's still raised many days later. What is that? So the best way to understand if your viewers have things like that, that's your immune system playing up right now. You have a reaction in your immune system, and it's inflamed. It's triggered. So that's kind of like an indication that maybe you need to look into things a bit more with your own health and try and get to the root cause of that. But that's just a subtle bodily symptom that comes up, you know. People just as like, it's just a winter thing, or that's just a summer thing, but it's just, you know, you got to listen to your body like anything, you know. Why is your muscle sore? You know, you listen to your body. Your body, going back to the start of our conversation, your body is a super intelligent system. You don't need to see a doctor. You just need to know how to listen to your body and the signals it's telling you, know.
My body was telling me today, go and swim in the ocean in the middle of winter, and I listened to it. I didn't put my head under. Sorry.
It's also telling you, hey, we need more electrons. Get some more.
Exactly. It does. It did. And I go, okay. I listened to my body and said, yep, I'm going to do that. So I went and I got in, And at first it was a bit achingly cold, but then after a little while it started to feel warmer and warmer, and then it was quite enjoyable. And then I started feeling fantastic, and the sun was shining on me, and had a ball. And then I came out thinking, I've got to do this every week.
Yeah. I like the drop that happens when you get to your car and you start going, you know, naturally heat up again. It's the best feeling ever.
It is, yeah. It was invigorating. It really was. I loved it, and surprised me. So, getting back to the topic of the school, yes. What are your plans for that? When do you think that will start? Where it's going to be obviously based in South Australia. What are your thoughts on that and how it's going to unfold?
Well, the first thing, so I've been trying to figure out like what's the order of things. I believe the book is the first and foremost thing, because when people like yourself ask about it, I can present them something, and when you read it, and if you want to learn more about it, that's what I'll teach in the school.
Are you doing pre-orders for the book, or?
I will be, yep. I'm
Okay,
just in the
sure.
stages at the moment of it. But yeah, that's definitely a plan of it, and I'm actually going to do all that sort of stuff, promotion as much. I mean, I've got to figure out how to do it all. I'm not really that savvy at it, but I'm open to any help out there. But yeah, the idea is the book is the precedent for it, almost like the study manual prior to coming to the school. And then the idea of the school is just a big expansion on everything in that sort of in the contents of that and more. So I can run through some topics, some of the module stuff in terms of like plans and dates. As I said, I'm looking to do it, but at the moment I'm so committed to this book first. But I've already kind of like halfway through everything anyway. So, give me 6 months, I'll be ready to rock. I've already done business plans, talking to some potential investors, but, nothing's kind of concrete at the moment. It's a big job for one person, so I need to find a team. This is why it's so important for me to find a tribe that can sort of share my vision and add their talents and skills and know-how to get this off the ground. And I truly believe that when it is established, it's like not only my soul's mission and a legacy that I can leave behind for future generations, but it also solves a lot of the problems that are existing in the industry. And there's three main areas that they're ultimately flawed in. One is certification, second is regulation, and third is education.
Right.
So can you believe on the first point, certification? I've been doing this 23 years, yet I cannot find a single piece of paper to show that I'm competent in my field. And internationally, there's nothing like that. So I'm just a go-to system, right? It's open to interpretation. So regulation. So we're talking about the inks, but then also on a lower level, an industry level, there's no discussion about what's the maximum a tattooist based on their skill level can charge a person. It's just open to debate. At the moment, I can tell you right now, there are many apprentices charging double what I am right now, and they're like 2 or third year. So
sure, it's all just all over the place, all over the shop.
Yeah. And I don't want to say, it's not about money like crap, but it sort of is a little bit, because people that exploit things and want to take from the industry that don't give anything back ruin it for people.
I'll edit that bit.
Ruin it for people like me that try and do the right thing.
Yeah.
Education. The health department, particularly in South Australia, has failed the South Australian tattoo industry for a decade now. I was working hand in hand with a woman who resigned, but that was the only time we had some really good momentum going and connection with the tattoo industry and the health department working together. But since then, the guidelines, health and safety guidelines, haven't been updated in 10 years. Can you believe it? They put us in the same category as hairdressing. Hairdressing and tattooing are two completely different degrees safety and guidelines.
It's ridiculous. It's such an oversight, isn't it? Looks like the whole industry is just being completely ignored.
Well, it's like
why would that be? Because they're not making money from it?
No, don't laugh. That's exactly it, I suspect, because everyone seems to take from the industry. Very seldom do people want to give back, right? There's no retirement plan for older tattooist, right? So
Mm.
I don't know how many more years I've got left of tattooing, but like in my sunset years, what am I going to do? So one of the things for this school is, okay, giving back. So what's the best way to give back? Like our ancestors did. Let's pass on the knowledge to the new generation. It gives the people that are on the sunset of their career an option to still be employed, still be involved in the industry, because now they can partake in teaching the new people.
Yeah,
And then
great
that can
idea.
feed itself and feed itself and feed itself.
Yeah.
That's sort of what I've already thought ahead, because I've seen my mentors just crash and burn, and they're just nobody. They're people that I looked up to for decades, and now
Oh, that's sad. Mm.
everyone's just forgotten about them. You know, it's a natural
Mm.
thing. The new generations come in and they take over, but like, what happens to the people that are still fighting fit, still loving what they're doing? There's nothing for them. You know, so that's
And
why.
that's an indictment on our culture and how older people are viewed as well by you know, the different generations. They're seen as being redundant. And the truth of the matter is they've got so much to offer the rest of, you know, society, and it's just overlooked
Yep.
in the same way. So yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, so you're looking at you know, like the regulation side of things, and then like the education thing. As I said, it's giving the people on the sunset their career an opportunity to keep active and partake in the craft, passing on their knowledge to the new generations, doing the work of the health department if they don't lift their game. They're saying at the moment that they're going to start doing a proper workshop, a yearly workshop to keep people updated. We'll still wait to see. So maybe I don't need to teach that aspect, but if they don't do it, that's a part of the module, is the health and safety infection control side of things.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, it's just those three fundamental flaws. So the way I can describe the industry, if I was to use an analogy, it's like a bodybuilder that's all top heavy flexing and then just skinny, underdeveloped chicken legs.
So
So
no foundation.
no foundation whatsoever. It's just whatever is attractive, whatever generates more money and revenue. But in terms of longevity and integrity, ethics, very, very little of that is actually.
Wow. Well, what you're doing is really, really important. And as you say, so many more people all the time now are getting tattoos. It's becoming more and more popular. So
Cool, because like you said, as more and more people are getting it, it's becoming more and more popular. There's less and less focus on those three main fundamental flaws.
yeah, yeah, that is very interesting. Well, I'm hoping that if there's anyone out there watching that can support what you're doing or help you in any way, I'd encourage you to please get in touch with Pablo and just help support him in his your endeavors to really change this industry for the better and help, you know, a lot of people in the process. So I really applaud what you're doing there, Pablo, and there's obviously a real need for it. So, you know, we will do another interview later on. Of course, you're going to keep me posted on the progress of your book as well. And if anyone wants to contact Pablo, details below. I'll leave your email, and you have a website there as well.
Updated, but yeah, it's there.
Okay. And the email is tattoo-with-intention@gmail.com. So that's easy. As long as you can spell tattoo, TATTOO, which sometimes it's hard to remember how to spell it. So that's good to know. And is there any last message that you'd like to leave briefly? We've been going over now, but briefly before we
Yeah.
go, Pablo?
Well, just briefly, just to, I guess, finish off the topic we'll mention about the school, just maybe I could just give like a very brief overview of like some of the things that you would be learning in the school.
Sure. Fantastic. Yes, please.
So just a quick overview of some of the modules. So basically there's like a fundamentals course, and then at the end of the fundamentals course, you can choose to just sort of go into another tattoo studio, basically landing on the ground running. You know, there's always this thing of like, once you start in a new studio, you kind of like this chain of ball holding everyone else down. It's like, I want people to sort of like hit the ground running, so it makes it easier for other people. Or, you know, if you want to sort of go, all right, let's evolve this and go another level further, there's the advanced course, which then goes into the metaphysics and stuff like that. So there's sort of like a structure that I'm working on. But some of the main topics that you'd be looking at is like the esoteric history. So you're looking at the Otzi, you're looking at the Neolithic era, you're looking at in focus the split between the tattooist and the tattoo artist and sort of the importance of that. So really start to get a bit of a fundamental of like where tattooing came from, and some of the clues and things that are showing that it's of its true intended nature, its therapeutic nature. And then you go into like some biochemistry kind of stuff. So you're looking at the interglutamacy system, like the skin layers and stuff, what happens during tattooing to the body, how it ages, how the electroconductivity of the skin. So we talk about the galvanic skin response, for example. You're looking at like laser removal and how that affects the skin and what happens to the body with that and the dangers of that. You know, things about melanin, lymphatic immune system stuff. You're looking at blue light, how it affects the circadian rhythm and the biology and stuff, and how we're surrounded by that, and how light can sort of change the expression of chemicals in tattoo inks and stuff like that. So the whole idea is when you walk away from that, you're sort of looking at it, okay, if I'm injecting this into the body, what's that going to do to that person 10, 20 years later? So you have a bit more ethical thing as a practitioner. So you do more research, you're more vigilant about, you know, the nature of the brands you're using and trying to find the lesser evil always in all areas, because there's a lot of them out there, as we talked about. Yeah. And then sort of going into ethics. So what is a tattooist? What's the definition of that? What are the keys to longevity in the industry? What is your main intention? You know, they're the type of things sort of ethical as a fundamental. Then all the health and safety stuff, but not just the infection control and different drills for equipment setup and breakdowns and aftercare. This is another topic, you know, what's the best method, dry or wet healing and stuff like that. But also like personal fitness and wellness of the tattooist, you know, mental health, emotional support, you know, lymphatic massage, breath work and psychosomatic kind of release and massage and things like that. So talking about like the longevity of a tattooist, you need to have these things in place. And then you're talking about metaphysics in the advanced course. So we're talking about the meridians, the chakras, the aura. Then also like different frequencies and tools in the tattooist's toolbox, you know, the crystals, herbs, you know, frequency machines, all these different modalities and things. But then also looking at each individual student, their natural abilities and talents. So for example, you know, you could be a clairvoyant, you could be someone who's an energy practitioner, and will learn how to integrate that into your craft. So then it's sort of like you're not separate from it, you're a part of it, you know what I mean? And it's all interconnected. So I don't expect people to follow exactly my path, but I anticipate that people will sort of have their own interpretations of it, and then it will evolve and evolve and evolve. So first and foremost, that's kind of the metaphysical aspect. Then there's how to hold a ritual, how to facilitate proper ritual. What is a ritual? What's all the stages and all that sort of stuff. Then you're looking at like the co-creative design process and the relationship between the tattooist and the collector from the get-go of a conception of an idea to this end product and all the way through. And then there's obviously the things in the book that we're talking about, the symbology, the color, the pain modes that people adopt and what all that means. And then also on top of that, you're going to learn the fundamentals of just tattooing in terms of the artistic aspects, how to pull a line, how to do shading, but not just an online course. Like there's going to be a lot of degree of face-to-face in an actual central hub. Then there'll be some kind of theory, and then there'll be some element of online stuff, but then also there'll be like private sessions as well. So I'm trying to think like over a month, how many hours of each section a person will do for a certain amount of time. That's still a bit to be sort of determined, but that's sort of a general flow of some of the things you'll be looking at and sort of how I kind of see it working for the average person that might still be working during all of this. Sure. That's the way to factor in. So, and then obviously there's costs involved and where the location is going to be, like all those different things. It's sort of like a little bit a ways ahead, but down the road. But, you know, these are things I'm thinking about. I'm open to any discussions with people that might be able to, you know, contribute to this in some way. If they want a teaching job, or, you know, if they're training assessment certificate, for example, and they want to use that for this, I'd love to sit down and create proper modules with people. Obviously some students, potential students, if they're open to these type of things, happy to have conversations with. So yeah, just this platform's just I guess a message in a bottle, and just have it out there. So anyone who's interested to sort of like look at tattooing in a deeper way, because we all in our career soul search for a deeper meaning behind what we do.
Yes.
And I'm just here to kind of show you that there is a deeper meaning and to help you live a more fulfilling life.
Fantastic.
Paddling. So,
well, it is a very artistic and creative thing to do. And, obviously I like art. This is my portal painting behind me, just in case anyone is wondering what that is. And art is such a beautiful gift to give to the world, and I really look forward to the day when humanity and our whole society really honors and values the gift that art brings. So thank you so much, Pablo. It's been wonderful to chat with you. And we'll do another one later on. And good luck with your book. Hope it goes really well and you're planning for the school. And it is really fantastic to hear what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing the same passion and belief that this is going to be good for humanity.
Absolutely. Yes, definitely is. Well, thank you. And thank you everyone for watching. And Pablo's details are all below. I'd love to see people getting on board with you and supporting your vision. That'd be fantastic. So keep me posted how that goes, Pablo.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank
I
you.
appreciate
Bye.
you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.